Kiryas Joel, NY. For some longtime combatants, it had nearly the sweep and significance of an announcement that a hard-won Middle East peace agreement was finally at hand. Kiryas Joel, a village in a corner of Orange County that is home to more 20,000 Hasidic Jews, gained its independence from the town of Monroe, an amicable divorce that was overwhelmingly approved by town voters on November 7. While most of the election day postmortems in the New York region focused on the string of Democratic victories across the area, there were ballot propositions, like the one here, that will leave a more lasting mark. Today is a truly historic day that will usher in a new era of peace and stability for all the residents of Monroe, said Gidali Zajedin, village administrator of Kiryas Joel, adding that voters had chosen diplomacy and compromise instead of angry rhetoric and litigation. The vote to separate Kiryas Joel from Monroe and form a new town of Palm Tree should mean an end to the conflict and lawsuits over zoning rules and other issues. For decades, this community of Hasidic Jews, in Orange County, about 50 miles northwest of New York City, lived an existence that was insular, but also expansive. It was founded in the early 1970s as a semi-rural outpost of the Satmar sect in Brooklyn, has grown rapidly, creating the need for multifamily housing and more land to build that housing. When one particularly fruitful Kiryas Joel resident, Yida Schwartz, died in 2010 at the age of 93, she left behind some 2,000 living descendants, putting a spotlight on the sect's adherence to the idea that bearing children is a tribute to God. Even though Kiryas Joel occupies less than 10% of Monroe, the village's population of 21,894 exceeds that of the rest of town, including the unincorporated area, as well as its two other incorporated villages, Monroe and Harriman. Officials and residents in the town of Monroe have clashed with Kiryas Joel over its efforts to annex hundreds of acres of land, and to erect four-story buildings in an area where many cling to a more suburban landscape. A few years ago, Kiryas Joel successfully annexed 164 acres of land from the unincorporated part of Monroe, but village officials had wanted much more. A group called Preserve Hudson Valley sued over the annexation, with opponents worried about the precedent of transferring land from one municipality to another and the impacts on a local aquifer. But last summer, Preserve Hudson Valley, a nonprofit group, and the village of Kiryas Joel entered into a legal settlement that set the stage for the vote on election day. Under the settlement between Kiryas Joel and the nonprofit group Preserve Hudson Valley, the village agreed to drop an earlier campaign to annex more than 500 acres of land, while the group agreed to drop its appeal of the town's approval of the 164-acre annexation. Instead, the village will annex 56 more acres, for a total of 220. And Kiryas Joel agreed not to acquire any more land for at least 10 years. Turnout was heavy on election day and the proposition passed with more than 80% of the vote.